The history books speak of Jewish immigration to Palestine, but this is, of course, a lie. There never was Jewish immigration to Palestine. They came as colonizers to conquer the land and take it from their native inhabitants. It is an insult to our intelligence as readers and listeners every time a historian speaks of Zionist Jewish immigration to Palestine, because they did not come as immigrants as we understand them, seeking to integrate into the population of their new home, shape and be shaped by it. And yet, it is not too late for those already in the land and among its people to change their relationship to it, should they choose. Why would a Palestinian such as myself speak today of Jewish Israeli colonists changing their relationship to the country and becoming immigrants instead? How can I speak of living with them, integrating them into our national social fabric after over 2 years of ongoing genocide, after they continue today to starve and slaughter us in Gaza with sadistic glee, after a century of ongoing Nakba? I insist on this because our Palestinian rights depend on it. It's worth remembering that the Palestinian struggle is not for peace and security. It is not for statehood. It is for liberation and justice. And the central injustice, beyond resurrecting the dead, that remains reparable today is the expulsion of the majority of the Palestinian population into forced exile. As the social media broadcast of the genocide has raised global awareness, it has become trendy for people to identify as anti-Zionist. But even though we all generally agree on what Zionism is, curiously, it seems that nobody seems to be able to define what anti-Zionism is. Don't worry, we're here to help. If Zionism is the belief in the right of Israel to exist, in the virtue of the creation of a state in Palestine exclusively for Jews or the Jewish people, one that has a right to do whatever is necessary to maintain a Jewish demographic majority in that state, then anti-Zionism is the belief that Israel does not have the right to exist, that it is an insult to our collective human values to artificially construct and maintain a Jewish majority in the land, and that if some Jews feel a historical attachment to Palestine and wish to live there, they can do so as immigrants. If this is maybe confusing for you, let me offer you a more simple test you can use with politicians and public speakers and friends alike. Whenever someone calls themselves an anti-Zionist, you can ask them whether they are in favor or against the Palestinian right of return, the right of Palestinian refugees to return to their homes in the land now known as Israel. Because the right of return is the core of the Palestinian struggle for liberation and justice. And because of this, one's position on the right of return will tell you everything you need to know about whether or not someone is or is not Zionist or anti-Zionist. In ODS in Palestine, we've been working over the past 2 years to fight against the idea of further exile. The Anglo-American Israeli Genocidal Coalition has been, for the past 2 years, as we all know, transparently and crassly seeking to frame ethnic cleansing, forced displacement, and expulsion of the Palestinian population out of Gaza as voluntary transfer, a humanitarian solution. A humanitarian solution to the humanitarian crisis that their genocide has created. We have sought, in this campaign, to center the option of return, reminding audiences that if Gaza is now unlivable, then 80% of the population in Gaza are not Gazans. They're Palestinians from the part of Palestine which is now known today as Israel. And they have the right to return to safety, to return to the safety of their homes there. So 2 weeks ago, we brought this argument to Dutch Design Week in Eindhoven, setting up a Gaza travel agency where people could go to buy their tickets and organize their return journey to their homes in Israel. And we worked with a lot of different volunteers from different backgrounds, Jewish, Palestinians, and other people. And we also had all kinds of people who came to the pavilion to speak with us and see what we were doing. And they also had all kinds of demographic associations. Palestinians came, Jews came, and people who were non-Palestinians and non-Jewish people came. And there was one theme that kept on repeating in all of our interactions, as much with our organizing committee as with the people who came to our pavilion. Non-Palestinians did not believe we were serious. They thought it was a cute exercise to have some kind of discussion, like a little art project. But they didn't really believe that Palestinians were actually serious about implementing the right of return and going home. But of course, Palestinians understand this. We know too well the long history of assassination and rape and poisoned wells and broken agreements. We have been speaking of Samud steadfastness for decades. We have not collectively held on, suffered every genocidal, racist, Zionist scheme seeking to induce our ethnic cleansing from our own land in order to speak of return just for fun. An interesting abstraction, an intellectual exercise. We know we are individuals belonging to a greater collective cause that is not our own to renounce. And that if one may not be able to return in their own lifetime, the least of their responsibilities is to remain steadfast and keep alive the possibility of the justice of return for future generations. And when the colonial empire's colonial offspring is killing uncounted hundreds of thousands in Gaza, having created the conditions of death to this day, even today under a supposed ceasefire, now with the eyes of the world turned elsewhere, we saw just 2 days ago, they officially now sealed the border with Egypt, so not even one truck of aid can get in. And they have no intention of reversing these conditions of death. It is our responsibility today to demand return immediately, here and now, for the people in Gaza to return home to safety today. Zionists also understand that we are not joking when we speak of return. Every single proposed final status agreement has sought to get a Palestinian leader's signature on a faux legal renunciation of the right of return. I say faux because the right of return in international law, as we all know, is an individual right that cannot be renounced by any leader. We all know that the Israeli stooge, Mahmoud Abbas, has famously renounced his right to return to his own hometown of Safad, now in Israel. But the attempt of this project is to find wiggle room through international law, to control the system, to control the judges, and to fudge just enough to create a smokescreen to make these inconvenient facts simply disappear. US and Israeli proposals at the 2000 Camp David summit sought to end all claims without providing for the right of return. President Clinton's parameters the same year did the same. The 2001 Taba summit included the same language. Even the Geneva Initiative of 2003, a citizens' initiative, not a state initiative, also sought to settle all claims without providing for the right of return. Ehud Olmert's push, now he's seen as some sort of liberal centrist, Ehud Olmert's push at the Annapolis conference in 2007, 2018, was also centered around getting Mahmoud Abbas to sign on to the end of all claims without allowing for refugee return. Time and time again, every final status agreement between the Zionists and the official representatives of the Palestinian people has failed over this issue. the only people who do not seem to understand that Zionism is centrally about preventing Palestinians from returning home, and that anti-Zionism is centrally about Palestinians returning home, is everyone else. So for the benefit of that audience, let me explain. We do not support one democratic state out of some abstract love for single states or a general dislike for partition, although those things are true. We do not have any particular affection for the idea of sharing our country with people who have been systematically and gleefully starving and slaughtering us in Gaza. Rather, we support one democratic state because we want to go home to all of it. A two-state solution, any two-state solution, every two-state solution, preserves an artificial Jewish supremacist state at the expense of the Palestinian right of return and is a violation of the basic human rights of the Palestinian refugees to return to their lands, and an insult to our basic values as human beings. Every right-winger around the world who supports a two-state solution must be pressed on whether or not they support the right of return. Are they now in favor of creating millions of refugees forced to find safety and shelter here in the West because they cannot go home? Every left-winger around the world who supports a two-state solution must be pressed on whether or not they want to deny the rights of refugees. Do they want pluralism in their own countries but seek to preserve the imposition of an ethno-supremacist genocidal state in Palestine? Two states is the definition of apartheid. A process or a pathway to a two-state solution is a process or a pathway to make apartheid permanent. Is this what left-wingers in the West support? My father was born in Haifa, my mother was born in Jerusalem, my grandparents are from Shefa Amr, Ramle, Beersheba, and Rafidia. All but one of these cities are in Israel, not in occupied Palestinian territory. I was born and raised in forced exile in Canada, and I can tell you the Aboriginal people in Canada have been at pains over the past 2 decades to make clear to well-meaning white people among their colonizers that land back is not a metaphor. So let me say it plainly, and I'm closing on this, don't worry. Return is not a metaphor. We are going home. And when we do, those among our colonizers who choose to remain will only be able to do so as immigrants to Palestine, as Jewish Palestinians, democratic equals among the rest of us. There is no anti-Jewish racism invoked by insisting on a Palestinian right of return, on demanding that we share the whole of the land under equal rights and democracy for all who live there. But there is anti-Palestinian racism invoked by insisting that Palestinians should, unlike every other refugee group in history, accept to never return home. If you understand and agree with this, congratulations, you are an anti-Zionist. Muchas gracias a ODSI por organizar este congreso. Gracias a vosotros todos por venir next year in Jerusalem. Thank you.